Hey everyone, welcome to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. As I said in the email, it is a very unusual week. We are spending a fourth week on equanimity. I have to say I'm really excited about that. Um, we'll begin as we always do with a short meditation. So please relax and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as thoughts come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car pass by on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. And Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. And Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, this week we'll start. Sorry, for those of you who haven't met her, this is Lila, the very affectionate kitty. She becomes a distraction to you, let me know. Or even if she doesn't, that's okay. A little co-regulation buddy. Um, so we're talking about equanimity for the fourth week, as I said. And I'd like to know kind of, have you tried, again, to kind of check in, have you tried an equanimity practice? How has equanimity shown up for you or not show up for you in the last week or in the last little while? So who would like to begin? Hi, Carrie, welcome. Yes, Toby.
Oh, I don't even know where to begin. Okay, a friend of mine had um a very close friend. This is somebody I almost married, so it's a pretty close friend. We've known each other for 40 years, but he informed me this last week that um he had something happened at work that was very complicated and very, very disheartening, and he suffers from anxiety horrendously. But as one might imagine, when I was being told all of these things, I started to have my own anxiety issues over it. Because, like I say, we're very close friends. And the upshot was that he wants to hide himself away in his little house and just go to work and not talk to anybody and not do anything. And he's not going to tell anybody about this thing. And oh, by the way, I'll see you when I see you.
Hmm.
Probably way too much information, and I'm sorry for the overshare if that is.
That's
Uh,
okay. No, we're all good.
well, but the good side of this is that realizing that there is nothing I can do to help my friend because
Hmm.
he's going through a thing, and he has chosen that he wants to deal with this by himself. I think it would be presumptuous of me to, check up on him to make sure he hasn't jumped off a bridge or something. But what I'm learning, I guess, is the upshot of all this again is what I'm learning is you can't control a lot of what happens. to
Yeah.
you or to anybody else. And while I love him and I don't want anything bad to happen to him, I also know that sticking your nose in where it doesn't belong is not necessarily helpful. So that is sort of my claim to equanimity for the moment. It doesn't mean I'm not concerned. It doesn't mean I don't care. What it means is that I am acquiescing to your wishes, and I will check on you from time to time to make sure things are haven't gotten too out of hand. But that's all you can do, you know. I mean, I don't believe he's going to hurt himself. I know it's nothing like that. But it's just a very, you know, when you have a friend who's going through a difficult time and they don't really want to share, they're not talkers, you know, they're not people who like to exude whatever. That's not how they deal with it. There's not anything you can really do other than just tell them, hey, you know, I'm here. If you get bored or tired or, you know, anything, or if there's anything I can do, you need groceries, whatever. But that's equanimity to me. That's the best I can muster.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Toby. And what I'm hearing is, it's an equanimity practice because of the acceptance. Like you're
Yeah.
unhappy about it, you're worried, but you're also recognizing, that this is their choice.
Well, it's not like he's 20, he's 67.
Right. Right.
So just saying,
Or as we would say amongst the fellows, he's a grown-ass man.
a grown ass
You
man. Yeah.
know?
And thank you for listening. I appreciate that. That helped me. Having all y'all listen, that helped me. So thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm just curious, who is this on iPhone 9? Just for kind of security reasons, since we can't see you, I'd just like to know who
Do you
that is.
hear me?
Oh, hi
Can you?
there.
Oh,
Good
hi.
morning.
Good. Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, that's me, Mark.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Wendy.
I maybe wasn't going to say anything, but then when Toby told us about her friend, and that's kind of like estrangement, a little bit of estrangement. And you guys all know that I've been going through a little bit of estrangement with my son. Well, the divine has given me a hint about equanimity through all this, because I'm in the car and I'm thinking, why is the estrangement with my oldest son? Why is it disturbing me more than the death of my middle son? I still had a lot of joy whenever I thought of Josiah, and I got this little, like, I don't know, still small voice or something saying, "What did you do? What did you do when Josiah died? What was your, reaction?" Because it didn't disturb my equanimity, not like this estrangement. And I said, "Well, I just thought that he was there with me. He was because I was thinking of him in the past and how we'd done things together and we danced together and I went to his games and he played the saxophone and I was close to him. So I was busy remembering all of the good times. Yes, he died and that was grief. I did grieve, but I just had something that wasn't disturbing the equanimity as much. Well, I know now with my older son how I'm going to do this, approach it the same way. I wasn't even thinking about how close I was with Dan and all the good times and all the fun we had and him jumping the counter at his place at work and me taking him to uh, baseball and it has helped so much.
Mm.
The equanimity part, it's like, sure, you just don't get over, but neither of those things I don't think I'll get over. That's not a thing. The thing is how I couldn't practice any of my other soul traits with this equanimity disturbing. It was really starting to get to me. So I think that was the divine giving me a little hint. Well, do the same thing that you did
Mhm.
with Josiah, with Dan, and it has helped. I would say.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm listening with an open heart. And yeah, sort of another, I'll not try to put a label on it. I think you were very clear. Um, talking about equanimity and how it's showing up for us, for those who've just joined. Hello, Harry and Karen. Nice to see you. And anyone else like to share? Yes, Beth.
Well, gee, I thought I was doing so well, and then I wasn't. Um, the group at my synagogue was studying Psalm 55 this week. No, it's 54, which is very short. And someone said, "Oh, but Psalm 55 is a really good one. Maybe we'll do that next week." And I looked it up, and it's about, cast your cares on the Lord, and He will sustain you, and He will not let the righteous fall. And it was a really good reminder. But I was trying to settle my husband's estate this week, and I no longer have meltdowns when people send me sympathy cards, but I have meltdowns when the bank says that they won't transfer funds and things like that. And I was just so frustrated and angry, and I really blew it. I started crying on the phone, and I was not handling it well. I didn't curse, but I was just very upset. And I got over it pretty quickly, and I was polite to the person who was trying to help me, but not being very helpful. But I still need to remind myself of the little mottos that we have when we face a problem, because we're going to have problems. And just when you think that there aren't going to be any problems today, along comes a monster, and you have to slay the dragon.
Mm.
I'll do better next week.
Thank you, Beth. And grief is so hard, and it can just sneak up on us. And, I like this phrase, grief quakes, and that's just how it goes sometimes. And,
That's a wonderful excuse. Thank you. You're so kind.
well, it's true. And I'm a trained grief counselor, so that's just how it goes. It's a different set of rules when we're really in that, especially when we're in that acute phase, when the loss is so recent. I think it's so wonderful you were polite.
Well, it wouldn't really help. All that would show would be my lack of education, my poor breeding.
I know I've been waiting this week to hear back about a few things, and boy, it's been hard. I really had to. My patience has been tested, and what I've had to do is, it really does help to remain centered as much as possible. And I was just thinking about, well, what do I need in this situation? And just understanding that, what I needed, what was important to me, um, was helpful. And so by kind of practicing patience and a little bit of self-care and just kind of self-understanding, it really did help me from, as we kind of talked about last week about sort of being centered and grounded. It's like, how do I not pour gas on this fire? And yeah, Martin.
Yeah, see, I'm on my iPhone. I didn't push any buttons. You can hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Speaking to your comment about sometimes in those challenging situations, that's how it goes. And then is it Beth was the woman that was just on the line? Yeah. It's I remember one of my very dear friends. He young and died, and he died. But I remember something he told me, and whenever I say it, I start laughing. It really helps. What he told me was that, Martin, everyone has problems. and when I say it, I just laugh, and it helps. It just all the angst just kind of melts. It doesn't solve the problem, but at least puts me in a better space, even though the problem is still there. And anyway, so both of your comments reminded me of what my good friend Jim had told me. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you.
Well, here's the gem and his good advice. Would anyone else care to comment on their equanimity experiences of late? Okay, well, we are going to someone who is part of the American Mussar community, reading about some of my equanimity posts, sent me a link to a psychological assessment of equanimity. And so we're going to spend a few minutes sort of looking at that and seeing how it relates to our Mussar practice. And so first, I have the equanimity spectrum up, and I put kind of the name of this ES16 test. Would someone like to unmute and read this?
The ES16 can be useful in the therapeutic context to assess experimental avoidance and a client's emotional reactivity, two factors that increase suffering.
Thank you. And I think that was experiential avoidance.
Experiential avoidance.
Yes, easy to get caught into experiment, but who wouldn't want to avoid an experiment, really? So do you see any relationship first between this experiential avoidance and emotional reactivity and the kind of spectrum of equanimity? Is that Pete? I
Yeah.
can't see all of you, so
Oh,
just
okay.
feel free to unmute and talk.
No, I think it gets to being able to take yourself out of the situation and look down from above it.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of the heart of equanimity, sort of avoiding this kind of being a little too oblivious or being too hysterical. It's just being removed, but observing. If I understood you correctly, is that what you were talking about?
That's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is it's trying to access experiential avoidance. Well, somehow I think maybe that's kind of like being oblivious, or it's, not maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but the emotional reactivity and, the word I used, hysterical, that really, I think, definitely lines up one to one. But it was kind of like, what Toby was talking about with her friend. It's like they just needed to, they're so off balance that they needed to kind of step away, really. Um, and when I left the corporate world, I was so like stressed out and amped up that I just needed like a month of playing, this computer game just to kind of give myself space and sort of recenter. So let's take a look at, I took a few of the questions. Okay, here we go. So these are 5 of the 16 questions, and you kind of rate each one on a scale of 1 to 5, where, 1 is you completely disagree, and 5 is you completely agree, and then it adds stuff up. And it comes up with a number. And I don't sort of understand all the details, but I would love it if somebody could, again, unmute and read these questions on the assessment and just sort of think about them a little bit.
I can read.
Thank you, Carrie.
For each the following score on a scale of 1 to 5, whether you agree or disagree. Number 1, when I have distressing thoughts or images, I am able just to notice them without reacting. 2, I approach each experience by trying to accept it, no matter whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. 3, when I experience distressing thoughts and images, I am able to accept the experience. 4, I am impatient and can't stop my reactivity when faced with other people's emotions and actions. 5, I am not able to tolerate discomfort.
Thank you, Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
So, I am curious, like, what are you sort of noticing, and how do these track or not track with some of the ways that we have discussed equanimity?
I have a question.
Yes.
When it says I approach experience by trying to accept it, does that mean just noticing it and just sitting with it, being mindful of it, or does it mean accepting the situation, whether it's good or bad? And I'm not quite sure what acceptance is here.
Yeah, does someone want to sort of share what they think it might mean? I can sort of give my take, but I'm open to others. If someone else wants to. Yes, indeed.
Well, it seems realistic to me, because once you have once you know that you really can't do anything about the actual experience, first you accept it, then you can react to it in some positive way or in a way that is going to be helpful. Because each experience, you've already experienced that. That's kind of the past now. And even in the moment you're experiencing it, there's really nothing to do except accept it. You're not going to be changing that experience. You're just going to be changing or trying to figure out what you're going to do about it or how you're going to react.
Yeah, I think that's great, Wendy. What do other people think that might mean? What does it mean to accept an experience? Yeah, Beth?
Um, being able to, I think it would be being able to reserve reacting in the moment. Um, in university, I had an experience, and another friend of mine had a similar experience where we were sent to an uncomfortable situation. It was an outside project where she was Jewish. She had to go to a church. They sent her to like kind of a really far out kind of church, jumping and hollering, and very different than a Jewish worship. And she really freaked out. And I was sent to a Scientology center, um, and it was very strange. But like, I just went through the interview and came back and reported about it to the class. Whereas she came back and she was very, her reaction was overwhelming, overwhelmingly negative, and she was very upset, seemed upset as she was describing the process, and she was not able to reserve her feelings about the experience so that she could evaluate it in a oh, there's a word for this. Uh, uh, I want to not cold, but like in a cold manner, really, to not get all hot and bothered about it.
Mhm. Yeah, so that reminds me a little bit of number one, too. When I have distressing thoughts or images, I'm able to notice without reacting. Or number three, I'm able to accept the experience. It's sort of like she was definitely reacting to this experience, and it sounds like it was shocking and overwhelming. And that is, yeah, an example of of yeah, someone who lost their center. And I say that without judgment. We've all been there where something pushes our buttons and we're upset by it, and that's why we sort of are practicing this for a month because it's really hard to kind of stay centered.
Is accept the right word? It sounds
What,
like if something bad happens, you want to do something about it. You mean with equanimity, perhaps, but you don't accept it. I mean, you don't. It sounds too passive to me.
yeah, so that's a great question. It's like, well, what if we want to do something about it?
Well,
And
there's some
sometimes
things
we
we can't do
can.
anything.
Yeah, but what if it's like, maybe it could be read, I approach each experience that I have no control over by trying to accept it.
Okay, yes.
That would be better.
Yeah. Um, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. But yeah, there's, especially in a Mussar practice, equanimity isn't the only thing. There's also like alacrity or enthusiasm. It's like sometimes, we should take action. We just don't want to sit in an unpleasant experience when, wow, this job is really awful. I need to move on. So that's where it's sort of different than patience. But again, it's like, you know, do I accept that this is really unpleasant and I could, in theory, leave, but I'm just going to throw gas on the fire by wallowing, or I don't know. It's complicated. Michael.
Yeah, it seems to me that what these questions are measuring is like equanimity, but not exactly the same, because avoidance on the one hand and reactivity on the other might not always indicate calm.
Hmm.
And that may be to Pete's really good observation, right? Because like
Yeah.
this seems to me to be getting at do you do you simply do nothing?
Hmm.
Because on the one end is avoidance, which would seem to me to be moving away from the thing. It feels like this is measuring fight or flight here
Hmm.
more than it is equanimity, even though I understand those two things are connected. It's not quite the same thing. At least that's how it feels.
Yeah, I mean, this is clinical. So it is, you know, oh, yeah. So it's not exactly the same as our spiritual practice for sure. One other thing, I'm just going to go back to the prior slide, and Toby, I see your hand. But I thought what was also interesting is that these things increase suffering. So there's this connection to suffering, and it's avoiding, experiential avoidance, emotional reactivity are suffering measures. And so another piece of the puzzle. Toby, and then Wendy.
This is a little obscure, but some of us that are first responders or like social workers as a criminal defense attorney doing death penalty work, I saw a lot of distressing images. If you've ever looked at crime scene photographs, you can well imagine that some of those can be pretty disturbing.
Uh,
And they do have some of them have a habit of sticking with you for a while. But as part of our job, I mean, police officers, emergency room docs, or nurses, or anybody, any of the first responder people, social workers, or CPS workers. I can only imagine that some of the things they have to witness are distressing.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. Being kind of a science nerd myself, these are not the questions that I would ask about experiential avoidance if I was designing this study. Just saying, I'm not a scientist and I don't play one on TV.
Yeah. But that's such a great question and a great example because if you're seeing crime scene photos or, you're a first responder to a deadly car accident, of course you're going to react. It's not like, but the question is, can you still do your job while you're reacting? And this is
I
sort
think
of
the issue
saying,
there is you don't react. I'm a physician, retired, but it's part of the training. I mean, you've got to maintain a cool head and do what needs to be done.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you can't pour gas on the fire. Are you making the situation better or worse? And by staying cool, you can make the situation better.
yeah, that's right. So Pete, yeah, that's a good point, Beth. And Pete, you're saying, yeah, well, it's part of the training is you have to, you know,
You don't do anybody any good if you become hysterical on the sight of something that's really ugly.
yeah. As part of the training when I was doing, I learned my grief counseling in a hospice, but I went through the general hospice training. They say it's okay to cry with the family, but you can't cry more than they do. You can't make it so that they have to take care of you, but if you, um, which is different than being a physician, that would be, but it's, you have to stay present. And there was once when someone was telling me their story about their parent passing away, and I was like, wow, I'm really like getting like I was like, oh my God, I'm on the verge of like crying hysterically, which never happens to me. And I'm like, okay, I cannot do that. That is not appropriate. I can cry after the phone call if I need to, but like right now, I need to be here for this other person. So, Harry,
Yes. I don't know if anybody ever heard of something called DBT, dialectical behavior therapy.
I have
Uh,
not, but I see some people nodding.
yes. It's used in a lot in mental health, but what more importantly, it's being realized it can be used by everybody. And I'm just going to read something for you. Dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, is a type of therapy that is all about helping you find a balance between two seemingly opposite ideas: acceptance of yourself and your current situation, and the need for change to make your life better.
Mm,
Think of it as a seesaw. On one side, you have accepting things that as they are right now, your feelings, your thoughts, even difficult circumstances. On the other side, you have the drive to make positive changes in your life. DBT helps you ride the seesaw, understanding when to lean into acceptance and when to push for change.
yeah.
And
So really, the psychologists are just trying to reinvent Mussar. I think that's,
yeah, well, it's making it practical, and as a whole, it's a whole program. And now it's becoming more mainstream because it's realized that you don't have to be mentally ill to use it.
yeah,
It's
sure.
um,
Thanks so much, Harry.
yeah,
Yeah.
dialectical
Was that,
behavioral therapy, DBT.
yeah. Hmm. Wendy.
I just have a question. Um, it's
Yeah.
about the scale because we're seeming to be doing it. Are we actually doing it? Because I don't understand what one is and what five is.
We're not filling out the
We're
assessment.
not going, okay, all right,
Yeah.
then forget it. Who cares?
Yeah. One is,
Sorry.
I can't remember which side is which, but yeah. Um, uh, and yeah, there's all kinds of, and then how you interpret it and blah, blah, blah. And that's all like a whole thing. So we're just using it as inspiration for discussion. I'm going to share my next slide just for a second, and then we'll start heading for breakout rooms. Um, but it just kind of grabbed a few of the quotes that we've looked at, and that talk about getting uncentered for this test. You talked about suffering. And then here is Rabbi Simcha Zissel Ziv, a person who has mastered peace of mind has gained everything. In other words, when you don't have peace of mind, it's suffering. And so obtaining the peace of mind, you need to be at peace with your emotions and desires. You need to accept kind of what is, I'm really grieving, I'm really angry, I'm really happy and exuberant right now, whatever it may be. Um, Rabbi Jennifer Gubitz called equanimity being able to face any situation without being moved from a centered self. And that really mirrors a lot of what you've been saying today and for this last 4 weeks. And then I'm such a huge fan of Eckhart Tolle, who wrote about separating the higher mind from the thinking mind, stepping into the role of the watcher, which is, I think, what Pete was kind of talking about. He totally talks about this deeper self behind or underneath the thought. I am thinking right now. Well, I am not the thought. I am having thoughts. So that's sort of the center of mindfulness practice. Um, so really seeing kind of the way that this evaluation was trying to science up, I think, a lot of these type of observations that our masters have made over the centuries. So for our breakout rooms, I wanted to come back to Chesed. We've sort of haven't talked about Chesed directly in a few weeks. And a reminder is Chesed is this word really hard to translate. Sometimes it's loving kindness, but it's supporting another person without expecting anything in return. And I think our first week we said, well, how does practicing equanimity help us do Chesed? And now what about the opposite? Are doing things for other people, can that be a way of practicing equanimity? Can that be a way of helping us center? I'm going to stop the share and open the breakout rooms. Before I open them, I am going to just put this in the chat. Okay, so the rooms are open.
Toby, you,
Muted.
okay, here we go.
Okay, sorry about that. I was so articulate. I'm really sorry that you missed it. Does practicing acts of Hesed help us with our equanimity? And if so, how? And if not, why not? Love to hear what you discussed or anything else interesting that may have come up.
That was a tough one. It was tough to figure out situations where it might apply. So I don't think we came to any conclusions.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, people.
Yeah, Harry.
Yeah, well, pretty basic for me. Is it gets you out of yourself? which is the first step. And equanimity is not to think about the problem you're having
Right.
and know that someone has a bigger problem that you can
Yeah.
help them.
Yeah.
And so that's a big, it's a distress tolerant. It's a way to deal with distress is to get out of yourself.
Mhm.
And and Chesed is a perfect tool to do that.
Yeah, thank you. I wish I had like a big whiteboard where I could kind of write these down because that's a good one. Michael.
Yeah, one thing that occurs to me is that if it is the piece of Hesed where you're giving without thought of response. And I know for me personally, if I'm giving without thought of response, now I'm not going to flip out if I don't get a response.
Mhm.
So that's really important. And it feels to me that's a staging ground for equanimity,
Yeah,
you know, because I give and I let go
right.
rather than give and say, okay, and now what?
Yeah, can I get my pat on the head now?
Right.
No, where's my pat on the head? But
Yeah.
no, it's not about that. Love that. Thank you, Michael. Wendy.
Well, I think it's hard to do an act of Hesed if you are not balanced in equanimity. It's just like I'm saying that somebody comes and says to me, will you do this? And I'm in the middle of thinking about how I am feeling about my son, the estrangement. I wait, no, don't you know I can't do anything because this is the only thing that's on my mind. And I think it was just like Harry was saying, it gets you do need to go do it. You need to go do it. It'll get you your focus and then you'll be balanced. So I think it's very important to those two things go together and helps you.
Yeah, it can kind of go either way, but yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's the last thing that we kind of is close to us is doing something for someone else if we're really caught up in something. Maybe something, yeah, it's like really legitimate reason to be feeling a lot of pain. So, um, for sure. Toby.
I wanted to say one thing about, can Hesed be directed to oneself, or is that more like Rachamim? Because if you are kind to yourself about, oh, I should have done this, or now this person is deceased and I can no longer do all of this stuff, rather than beating yourself up about that, you didn't know, you did the best that you could. Most of us do the best that we can do most of the time. I mean, certainly most of the people on this, I'd like to think that the world operated with most people doing the best that they can. Now, sometimes the best that they can do isn't all that great, but if I find for myself, if somebody's mean to me for some reason, I kind of tend to reflect upon it and say, hey, they might have been having a bad day. You don't know what happened to them. You don't know if their spouse just left them or if their child just got hit by a truck or whatever. You don't know, and we don't know. And in most cases, we aren't going to know.
Right.
I kind of chalk it up to that. And that's a way of being kind to myself, of saying, hey, don't get all bent out of shape about this. This person probably didn't mean to be mean. They're just doing the best they can.
Yeah, thank you, Toby. That's well said. And I would say, a definition of Hesed is doing something for another person without expecting anything in return. But I do think we can do Hesed for ourselves. And it is very, Chesed and Rachamim are which means compassion, are very closely linked in the Torah. Very frequently they show up together. They're both attributes of the divine. So, and sometimes Chesed is translated as compassion. So, absolutely, so we say it's such a hard word to translate. Karen.
So often when I'm really having a tough time, I try to figure out how to do something nice for somebody else because that just makes me feel better. And as I think about equanimity, it probably helps center me so that I'm in a better place to address whatever is going on in my world. I hadn't thought about that way, but that is a coping mechanism for me when things get tough, is to figure out how to do something nice for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, that is a great answer too. All right, friends. Well, that is it for today. So we will close as we always do with a short meditation. So please relax and close your eyes. And notice the light that's filtering through your eyelids. This is the light of our divine spark, something we always carry with us, that essential piece of goodness that no one can take away. We can't always see it, but we can know that it's there to help us remain centered, to give us an anchor to our true self. And as a connection to something greater than ourselves. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.